Topics covered in this video will be using FAB assets, the material editor, laying out the environment with FAB assets. Okay, so we're back and we're going to be using those FAB assets that we downloaded. Remember, if you are just jumping into this particular moment, if you already have some background in Unreal, we are using FAB assets to kind of design out a little bit more of the space. So don't forget, you can click on the Get FAB Content here. Remember, I'm in 5.6 here. So if you're using another version before that, you may have to download the FAB plugin to get that to work, but it should still be a pretty straightforward process here. So I've already downloaded a few assets here. So if I go into my contents area here in my content browser, go to the FAB folder, you'll see I have a few things going on. One of them that I think is really valuable here is if I go into the mega scans, you'll see surfaces, and the material that I have here is a road asphalt. And I've already applied it to the ground here, but I can simply click it and drag it and drop it. Now if I play this, you'll see that looks like asphalt, so that's looking really nice there. One thing though I do want to mention is if I double click on this material, it's going to open up the material editor here, and the cool thing about this is I have tiling. So remember how I was talking about the scale, if the scale of a material that's placed on a piece of geometry is way too big or too small or whatever, you'd have to go in and kind of adjust it, depending on what you want to do. This is a great example of that. So you can actually set a material up to be editable and to be tileable, and this has done that. So if I come in here, I can drag that up and down. You'll see that that scale changes and gets bigger or smaller on that tiling. So I'm going to leave it right about there. That looks good, and I'll go make sure I hit save on this. Now, I want to preface this by saying a lot of the stuff that I'm doing, there's a lot more steps involved here, right? So there's a lot of ins and outs of Unreal, but for what we're doing with just like quick previs and visualization stuff, we just want to kind of get started and poke around and play around, because once we get into laying out our environment, the fun starts when we put a camera in and really start to pose our characters. But we got to get the environment kind of laid out the way we want first. And that's why I'm suggesting use FAB, use things off of any of the other sites that you use to find copyright-free or royalty-free 3D models. Model it yourself, however you want to get into it. Just get into that process of creating assets here for Unreal. Now, let's go in and add a couple more things. So I'm going to pop all the way back to the FAB folder, and I'm going to use the industrial stairs. So I'm going to double click on all these and get into the static meshes. And this, if I drag and drop this out, you'll see I have that static mesh right there. And that's pretty cool. Oops, I hit F to frame up on that. That's looking pretty great. I like what I'm doing there. And I want to place this little piece, I want to place this piece of stair kind of in this area here. So I'm going to kind of position it right kind of in the position where this would be. So we'll hit the E key to rotate it around, R to scale up, and if I'm grabbing the middle here, all three of the axes highlight, so that tells me that those are all going to scale in unison. And then I'll pull this up to right about there. That looks pretty good, and drag it over. And pretty good, I like it. And then I could come in and I could simply do the same thing as before. Alt, click and drag, Alt, click and drag. And again, you see, it's as simple as framing these things up. And now, once I'm happy with that, I can start to delete my placeholders. Now, I'm not going to delete yet because I want to lay a few more things out. But you can kind of see how quick and easy it is to get into the process and really start to design out and then really fix up your spaces. So what we'll do is we'll hold Alt, click and drag it up. And it's okay if it's overlapping again. For this instance, I would normally say if I'm making something that needs to be true, I would make sure that things are not overlapping like this or like pushed into the floor. I would try to make it as exact as possible. But for this particular demonstration, we're okay. So I'm going to pull that over there and then rotate it back around 180 degrees. And then I can actually delete this one, because I kind of like that little bit of offsetness. So it goes up, 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 and then I'm happy with that. And now, as always, I always like to say, make your life easy. Copy and paste, right? So that's like always a huge thing. So I'm going to pull back a little bit, and I'm just going to delete this guy out of there. Select these guys, W on the keyboard, Alt, click and drag, Alt, click and drag, and just kind of like line those up. And looking pretty good. I like what I have going on so far. And if you have a piece of material, like if you have an asset or a model that is working for you, and you're like, you know what, this is just a cube that I squish down and I like it, then that's awesome. Use it. But a lot of times I like to kind of build these things out with a little bit more, pre-made assets or assets that I'm modeling out. So I'm going to go in here now. I'm going to go back to the Fab folder, and what I'm going to do is go to the buildings folder. I download some buildings in here. I'm going to the static meshes, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull out these buildings, but I want to show you something that's a little funky. If I pull these buildings out, you'll notice that they are all one model. It's just one big model. Now that's not going to work perfectly well for what I want to do here, because I want to take these guys and kind of drop them in here and kind of make them work in my space. So what I need to do is I need to kind of separate these guys out a little bit. So there's a really handy way to do that, and this isn't going to be needed to be done for every asset you pull from Fab. Some assets from Fab will be separated out into individualized elements. Sometimes they're not, though. Sometimes they're just one big chunk, and you got to kind of deal with it. So what we'll do here is we'll go into our, up at the top, we'll go into our modeling, and then we're going to go to our Xform, and we're going to click on this little option that says split. And what I want to do is I want to make sure that this split method says well, in this instance, it's going to vary depending on the model that you have, but in this instance, vertex overlap works because it gives me the big chunks of the buildings. If I were to do material ID, do you see how all of those pieces now have different colors? Those will all be separated out based on the coloring. So what I want to do is I want to use, in this instance, mesh topology doesn't work, and neither does polygroup. So what I want to do is vertex overlap, and that gives me a pretty good acceptable kind of place. I'll click accept, and it's going to take a second to do it. And once it's done, I'll pop back in and I'll show you what happened. And oh, you know what? I think it did it. Let's see. Yes, it's done already. I didn't even need to stop. All right. So what happened was now that those are separated out, I can click on them all individually, and now I can move them individually. So it's just a quick little trick. And the reason I bring that up is because if you don't have access to another modeling program, or you're not familiar with modeling programs, 3D modeling programs, this is a fast way to do it. And again, for previs, if we're just thinking and worried about getting the visualization of a film we're going to make, then this is a great way to do that, just to lay this stuff out. I could use Blender. Blender is another free tool that you can access that is downloadable and usable on a Mac or a PC. But again, if I don't need to leave Unreal for something that I'm doing here, I'm not going to. I'm just going to try to do it within Unreal. So now I have this in space here, and what I can do is kind of figure out where I want to lay these out. And I'm going to flip them around, right? Because I should be in an alley, and that's actually good for what I'm doing. So I'm going to grab that, pull that down, pull it over, and start to drop these into place. And now, remember I had already laid out those these other building pieces. So what I might actually do now is I might now start to get rid of some of these, because now if I'm doing that, you know, it's going to need to be adjusted a little bit. And it's actually not too bad the way I have this laid out, but I'm going to, we'll do a little bit more work on this here. So we'll grab these guys, pull it over a little bit. And I'm actually not too mad about that. I think that actually looks pretty good. So now we'll get rid of that. Yeah, that's fine. I'll delete that. Apply it to all, because I have those groups, so it's going to take a second to delete all those. So that actually looks cool. And what I would want to do here is, again, just kind of build this out appropriately. I do need like a little catwalk or a walkway for this. But once I get one laid out, you know what I'm going to do? Copy and paste it, right? Because I'm just doing previs. I don't want to say just previs, but I'm just doing previs to figure out what my space is going to look like. So I like what I got going on so far. And again, I might need to adjust this a little bit. And in this case, yeah, I kind of we'll do that. I'm going to pull these over a little bit because I like having that third building there. So I'm going to go through the process and kind of build this out a little bit more, and then we'll come back and I'll show you what it looks like with all of the assets kind of in place. Okay, so I have all of my assets laid out, the ones that I'm going to use again for this previs process. And if I go ahead and hit the play button, you can see here I am. I'm able to look around. I've added a couple things, some cars and some dumpsters, some garbage cans and those types of things. I also went in and added like a little bit of a catwalk kind of deal. And I'm totally happy with the way this is looking. I think this is going to be a great starting point for my alleyway scene. And I'm happy with that. So there's one thing I want to mention here before we stop with this particular video, before we move on to the next one. I want you to watch what happens when I hit the play button. If you notice, it starts a little darker and then it gets brighter. So when I'm doing any type of creation of, if it's going to be an animation or a cinematic for a game or previs elements to do storyboarding with, I want to try to get my lighting pretty consistent. So one thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to go to the Edit tab at the top, Edit menu, and go down to Project Settings. And then I'm going to scroll down over here on the left-hand side, and I'm going to go down to the Engine and look for Rendering, which is going to be right there. And then in here, I'm going to scroll down more. There's a lot of stuff in here. I don't want you to worry about everything else that we're looking at. I just want you to look at one thing, which is right here, which is the auto exposure. And I'm going to just simply go to auto exposure and turn it off. Okay? And then I'll close that down. And then what's going to happen is when I play this, now you'll see that my lighting stays consistent. It doesn't get brighter. And what's happening is the auto exposure in Unreal allows the engine to kind of brighten up certain areas if it's too dark and kind of keep everything kind of like on an even level. Here, what this is going to allow me to do is actually light my scene a little bit better so I can actually see the scene the way I would like it to look without having anything adjusted for me after the fact. So I'm going to make sure auto exposure is turned off. Okay, in the next video, what we're going to be doing on the next demo is we are going to be creating some lighting. We're going to also be creating some cameras, and then we're going to set up some basic shots to use for storyboards. So let's take a look at that in the next video. Topics covered in this section: creating lights and atmosphere, creating cameras, high-resolution screenshots. Okay, so here we are. I am going to go in and create some lights and a camera, and we are going to get to a point very similar to this. So we're really starting to set our scene. We're adding in a little bit of atmosphere. We're really starting to create the environment that we would like to set our stage. And again, all of this is going to be in service of the creation of visualization elements that we can use if we're then going to go out and shoot a project, or if we're going to go out and maybe we end up using this content as the actual end goal is to get something out of the engine, render it out, and use it as an animation. But whatever the case is, getting really familiar with the process of doing this is the important part. So let's go ahead and get rolling with that. So I've done quite a bit here, so I'm going to pause the video. I'm going to undo everything I did, and then we're going to come back and redo all of that. Okay, we are just about back to square one with our lighting and everything. And as you can see, it looks, it looks fine. No real problems with it, but I want to give it a little bit more mood, a little bit more atmosphere. So one of the first things that we can do with this is we can go in and we can kind of set a time of day in a way. So by default, the third person template that I've used here has a directional light in here. So if I click on the directional light, and if I can't find my lighting in my outliner, I can type in light, and you'll see a little folder that says lighting, and it should pop in there. So I'm going to go in here and click on my directional light, and then down here in the details panel, we haven't really talked about this a whole lot, but in the details panel, you're going to be able to get to access all the information about the individual actors or assets that you have inside your scene. So I'm going to click on directional light, and then down here in the details panel, the very first thing I can do is I can click on the rotation here, and I can just simply move the rotation around. And you can see as I'm doing that, it's actually changing the position or the direction of the light itself. So it starts to look like the time of day is changing. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to kind of dial it in to a point, well, we'll go right to about 0. And what this is doing is it's starting to make it feel like it's dusk out, okay? So it's starting to kind of be a little dark. I don't want it to be pitch black, but I do want it to be pretty dark. And in fact, I might go -2 on that. Or actually, 0 is good. We're going to pull this around. So I kind of want to get it something, so I'm getting a little bit of light coming through that back. Like that's kind of nice. I'm just going to dial it in. You got to kind of find the right angle on these. And actually that looks cool for what I want to do. I just want a little bit of light off in the background there. Now the other thing that I'm going to do here is I'm going to actually create another light. I'm going to create a point light, and I'm going to kind of stick it up above everything. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come over here, and under this quick add button, I'm going to drop that down and go to lights, point light, and then in here I have this little point light. I'm going to pull it up and pull it up even a little bit further, and let me just zoom out a little bit. What I want to do is have this sort of act almost like a moon or something. So I just want to have like a really big light here that's going to kind of give me that ability to cast some light on this. And I'm going to go into the details on this light, and I'm going to kick the intensity up a little bit. And then the other thing I'm going to do is I'm going to kick the attenuation radius up pretty big. So you'll see what it does when I do that. It starts to pull that in, and anywhere that kind of attenuation radius is casting is going to give me that light being cast. So now if I hit play, you'll see that's looking pretty good, kind of like what that's doing. It's kind of giving me a sense of what that's going to look like. Maybe I kick up that intensity a little bit higher. Let's make it 500. And that's looking pretty good. Now the other thing I'm going to do with this is I want to tint it a little bit. So I'm going to use a combination of the light color and the temperature, because when I'm using temperature with lighting, it helps me kind of figure out if I'm going to be like a warm, like kind of like tungsten-y kind of color, or if I want it to be a little bit more bluish. It's a little bit of a cooler color. And nighttime light is usually a little cool. It's kind of that bluish cast, almost silvery blue kind of feel that the moon gives off. So we'll go ahead and click on the light color now, and I can kind of find that silvery blue, and that's pretty decent, sort of around there. I think I like it. Go ahead and hit OK. And then you can kind of see that gives us a nice little bit of a combination of the light from the point light. That's the temperature is a little bit of a cooler color, and then also the light color giving it a little bit of that silveriness. That looks pretty good. So if I were to go ahead and play this again, always play to check it out, and that looks pretty decent. Now, a couple other things that I had going on. In my scene, I have these little lights, these posts, these street lights. Now, the thing with these is that they have an emissive color on the material, so it's actually glowing a little bit. You may find that if you pull an asset from the Fab store, that you'll get some emissive colors on something like a light fixture, and it actually isn't really casting light. What it's doing is it's kind of like a glow coming off of the material. In order to cast light, it's easy. All I got to do is come in here to my quick menu and go to lights again, and I'm going to use now a spotlight. And I'm going to pull this over. Again, always hit F to frame. Oops. And do that, sorry. Hit the wrong button. Pull this over, pull it up, frame it up, and get it to right about where I want it to go, sort of like there, and looks pretty good. Excellent. So that is looking pretty good. All right, now one thing I do want to mention, if you're having a little trouble positioning, you see how it's kind of snapping a little bit? sometimes what happens is the grid snap is turned on. If I just turn that off now, it'll just roll a little bit easier. So I tend to leave it on a relatively low number, like maybe 1 or 5, or I just turn it off if I'm doing something like this. So there's that. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to kick that intensity up a little bit. So kicking the intensity up, and then also I'm going to use like a little bit of a yellowish color, almost like what you would see from a street lamp or something in New York in an alleyway or something like that. Kind of gives you that vibe. And now I'm going to hold Alt, click, and drag it over, and just get to the next one and frame it up. Make sure I'm, oops, I passed a little bit. That's fine. Sort of like this. Scroll back over this way. Click on this one if I can. Let me just frame that up. Grab it. And then I'm going to grab the next one and pull that over and get to this car here. Boom. So I can kind of get a little bit of highlight on that car. Alright, so that's looking pretty good. Let's go ahead and hit play to see it. And already I'm starting to get some nice little momentum going with my shot here. A couple other things I might want to do in here. I might want to have a little bit more light on this side. Before I do that, though, I'm going to look at one other lighting element that I have in my scene already by default, which is this skylight. So if I select skylight here, it's going to give me the ability to go in, and it's actually capturing the scene. So it's doing this, like, you know, this little button here, I can click on that. It says real-time capture. So it's actually capturing the scene a little bit and kind of helping to add a little bit of a little extra oomph to my scene. So, for example, if I were to come in here and actually change a couple values on this. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to kick the intensity scale up a little bit. So let's go to like 50. And you can see what it does is it kind of like adds in what the natural ambience of that space might look like. I'm going to leave that down. It was at 10. Might go like 15 maybe. And maybe a little bit higher, maybe 20. And I'm just trying to get a little bit of extra light kind of in my space. Now, but the other thing that I do want to do in here is I'm going to click on the color again, and I want the lighting, that ambience, to kind of have that tint as well. Because you can see if I pull this around, it's really affecting the overall look and style of that. And again, for the nighttime, I kind of want it that silvery blue, and I think that looks pretty good there. Awesome. So I'm moving along. The other couple things I might do now, if I'm looking at my scene, I might want to give it a little bit more emphasis in the underneath my bridge here. So one thing I do want to do, though, as I'm looking at this, let me just go back and double check. I was in play mode there, so I want to make sure that my settings stuck with what I was doing here. So let me pop back into my skylight and make sure that oh, and look, it didn't do it. So my intensity scale stayed at 10, so pop that to 20, and then we'll turn this to blue. So make sure you don't do that little mistake that I had just done, which was I accidentally left it in play mode, and when I do that, my settings won't actually stick, so I got to make sure I go back and do that. Alright, but now the next thing I want to do is I want to add a little bit of light underneath my bridge here, or that walkway. So again, we'll go into the quick add button, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab this awesome light called a rectangle light, and the great thing about the rectangle light is that, select it here, it actually creates a light that is very similar to what you would expect like a fluorescent overhead light or something like that would do. And the cool thing about it is I can change things like the width, I can change the height, right? So what I'm gonna try to do with this is kind of do something that looks a little bit like that. And then I can also change the barn door angle, so it gives me a little bit of a sliver of light, sort of like that. And I can also change the length of the barn doors. So it gives me a lot of ability to kind of create a very stylized kind of look on that light. And now if I take this and drag it, let's say underneath, kind of where I would think maybe over this, you know, something like that, it gives me that cool kind of effect. And I like what that's doing so far. maybe I'll take the attenuation radius and make that a little bit bigger so it's kind of casting a little bit more light. And let's see what else I might do with this guy. Oh, we'll give that like a little bit of a blue color as well. Sort of what you would expect a light like that might look like. So there's that guy, and that's pretty cool. I'm also going to come in, and I can play with this to my heart's content. So actually I kind of like that a little bit more. So that's looking pretty good. And then I'm going to pull these guys. I'll do that kind of like across the board here, just to add a little bit of emphasis and pizzazz, I like to say, to my scenes. So places where I might like to enhance what I'm doing with my shot. So something like just a little bit like that. So now if I play this already, I'm really liking how this is looking. This is pretty good. Now, if you notice, I put the light in there, but I didn't actually put in a model of a light. So there's no 3D model of the light. I would want to go back and kind of either mock something in there or get something that looks like a little bit of a fluorescent tube, just so that there's something there. Now for this demonstration, I'm not going to do that because it would take me a minute to model something or to put something in there, but you get the idea. It's up to you. This is your world. You're designing, you're building, you're doing what you want to do. So all those things can kind of like add to the realism and the overall effect of your space. All right, so there's some lighting. Now, again, there are a lot of things that I haven't covered because a lot of this is sort of a big, broad overview. This is just a way to get you started and start playing around. You will inevitably come across things and have things that happen that you're like, well, what the heck is going on with this? This isn't working the way I thought it would. And that's totally fine. The thing is, there are so many resources for you that you can look at on the Unreal website for the learning sites. It'll really give you a good overview of how to fix some of the problems you might have. The best thing to do is like just start to get in there and play around and lay things out. So all that being said, I'm liking what I have so far. The last thing I want to do here is I can add a little bit of atmosphere to my scene. And I have something, again, by default. It's one of the reasons I like to use the templates, is I have what's called the exponential height fog. So if I select the exponential height fog, again, come down here into my settings, and I can come in into, like, let's say my fog density, and let's kick that up to like 5. That's pretty heavy, but what you're going to see is it starts to fog out my space a little bit, and right away you can see that it's really kicking in and it made the scene way darker. So a way to fix that would be to go into the skylight, let's say, and you could come into the skylight and kick up the skylight intensity quite a bit. Now that's way too much what I just did. I was at 20 and now I'm at 1800. So I'll come in and I'll just do like 50, right? So, and that's not enough, so maybe 100. So what this will do is if I dial this in appropriately, I'll start to get that look back. But the thing is, I'm getting this nice little bit of depth in my scene now that, you know, with or without that exponential height fog, you can really see the difference, right? So it's starting to create that atmosphere, which is what I'm going for. And there's so many things you can play around with in here, like the fog in scattering color. There's, you know, the ambience of the color of the fog. There's all kinds of things that you can really play around with to explore. And I'm not going to go too much more into detail on that, but that's sort of the key with this guy. Now when I play, you'll see it's looking pretty good. Got that nice little bit of fall off in the background. And as I go, there may be particular parts that I'm not loving. Like, as an example, I really wish that this was a little bit brighter back in my scene here. So what I might do is try to grab this and kick that intensity up way higher. And I really want to make that pretty high, so let's go to like 300. And the reason I'm doing that is so when I see my shot here, I can start to see that car a little bit more. So all these things in play are really starting to make the scene look a little bit more lived in, or give us a little bit more life with this. All right, so that's pretty great. Now the last thing that I want to look at for this is creating cameras. So I'm going to create a camera, and then I'll show you how to kind of manipulate that a little bit. But there's a whole lot with cameras, so we're going to actually cover that in the next video. So it'll be a little specialized one just talking about cameras, but there's a lot to them. So what we're going to do though is we're going to find a great scene. So let's go in here and let's try to find sort of a cool shot that I like. And you know, I'm going to kind of run around here and, you know, maybe like, you know, sort of like this is kind of cool. So that's sort of a nice angle, right? So I'm just running around my space. I'm thinking, well, that looks pretty cool. Now I'm going to hit escape on the keyboard and it locks me into that position, which is great. That's what I want because I wanted that shot. And now the only other thing I'm going to do in here is I'm going to go up here to the little perspective panel, drop that down, and down here it says create camera. I'm going to go ahead and create Cine Camera Actor. Boom. And now you'll see I get this little Cine Camera Actor window that pops up if I have that selected in my outliner. But I can also click on perspective and go into that camera and see what that camera is going to look like, right? So this is why Unreal becomes so powerful for filmmakers, is that as you set this up, once you get your scene in play, it is like playing a video game. You run around, you look, you say, that's a sweet shot. I love that shot. I really want to make that something that I'm going to use in a film. Well, there you go. Rock and roll. It's there. So now I have this Cine Camera Actor there ready to go. And what I can do is I can actually come in and I can change a whole lot of settings. I can actually use my understanding of cameras and lenses to really start to build out a really cool shot using this particular camera. So I'm going to do that, like I said, in another video, but for right now, if I was just trying to get scenes, I could totally use this setup. And let's say, for example, if I wanted to use this shot and I wanted to get a little bit of a screen grab from it, I could do that in a couple different ways. I could literally do a screen grab, or I could actually save this shot out as a high-res screen grab. So let me show you how to do that. So what I'm going to do, one other thing I'm going to do is I'm going to hit G on the keyboard. And if you notice, these little icons kind of go away. G sort of like it's called game view. So it sort of like hides a lot of the little handles and decals and things. So I just get the shot the way I want it. So that's looking pretty cool. So what I'll do, I am going to go up to the same button that I used to grab that and turn that to lock it into the Cine Camera Actor. What I'm going to do is I'm going to scroll down and you'll see high resolution screenshot. I'm going to click on that and then it's going to say screenshot size multiplier, so I could actually like make that a little bit bigger if I wanted. I can also use a timestamp as the image name if I wanted to do that, and a couple other options in here as well, but I'm just going to go ahead and leave those alone. Go ahead and hit capture. Should do it here any second now. I have a couple things going on my computer. Hopefully this will not cause a problem, but should. Did it do it? I think it did it. Yes, it did. I didn't see it. There it was. It was under my video. So if I click on this now, it'll open up. And you'll see I actually did that a couple times. Now if I double click on it, boom, there it is. That matches. Let me get rid of some of the stuff so you can see what I'm doing here. That's it. Boom, boom. And it looks pretty much the same. It's the same exact shot. There it is. Now I can take this out and I can use this for my previs and I can say, hey, check it out. You know, this is what I'm thinking for this shot. I want to have this car off in the distance highlighted by a street light. You know, I want to make sure that I have X, Y, and Z in the space and we're rocking and rolling. So that is the way we would do that. And again, let me show you one more time. I just want to do this really fast so you can see the beauty of this. Boom, here I am in my scene. I'm going to run around my shot. I'm going to find the shot that I like. So let's go in here. Oh, don't look. You see the magic of Unreal here. I don't need all that stuff, so I didn't build it. So let's go in here. Actually, I don't like that because of that. So let's say, you know, this is sort of like the shot that I want. Maybe something like that. Hit escape. And actually, sorry, I got to go back into perspective here because what happened, if you noticed, when I go into play mode, if I don't have the perspective camera selected, it'll default back to the other camera that I had. So we'll try to do that one more time. So boom, there it is. I like it. Go back into here, create camera, Cinecamera actor. Sorry, my video's in the way. And now my second camera actor is there. Now I can cycle between those two. There's the shot for camera 3. There's the shot for camera 2. And boom, boom, boom. Now I'm telling a story visually. So these are all the things that I can start to do with Unreal. As soon as I get that kind of figured out, I'm rocking. And there's that screenshot. Pop that open. And now I'm really starting to board this out. So as I said, in the next video, what we're going to be doing is we're going to be looking at the camera in a little bit more depth. And then I'm going to start looking at posing characters inside of your scene so that you can really start to tell stories with character as well as the shot compositions.